I was gonna have kids with this woman. We were building a family together. My entire future ended in like the span of 2 weeks. Lost the house, she took the dog. I didn't have any money at the time, and okay, the way I'm gonna handle this, I'm just gonna focus on being the absolute best version of myself. And then 2020 happens, and the whole world changes. 2020 was my first $1 million year. Before that, the most I had ever made was 150 or so. So my biggest regrets is that I didn't do it sooner.
The best day traders have similar tendencies to a gambler, or would you say it's almost the opposite?
90% of people fly by the seat of their pants. They're not in control of their emotions, but those things are required. And when you see money go up and down in seconds, you need to be in control of your emotions, or else you're going to make poor choices.
Kyle, talk about how Invest CEO came about.
Yeah. So good question. So for me, I kind of started my career as just a normal financial planner and figured out pretty quickly that that was not going to be a good path for me. And it's kind of a combination of...
Talk about real quick. I want you to tell your story, but what does a financial planner usually do? Because I think a lot of people get confused with financial planner, CPA, accountant. So like, what's kind of the difference with the financial planner?
Yeah, think of it like he's going to build your investment portfolio and ideally manage it for you. And there's some other stuff that goes into that, but that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. Now, the thing about it is, like, you're working for a bigger company like I was, unless you have like a giant list of people that have a ton of money, which I'm like 24 at the time, it's going to be a tough road because they're really just dealing with people that are mainly wealthy to begin with already. So for me, I'm sitting there cold calling like 100 people a day, trying to build a financial planning business. And
so they don't give you any better way to actually build clientele than the cold call.
No, dude. I mean, that's
so it's like the Wolf of Wall Street, except you're selling good.
Yeah. And that's kind of what turned me into online business in the first place, is because you start down this career path. And I knew I wanted to be in the investment space because I enjoyed doing it. But you get in there and they don't let you do anything at all on social media. So like nothing online, just compliance wise, they don't like it. And the sales system they have.
Right, you can't even post personal stuff.
You can post personal stuff, but like anything about what you do is basically like...
Right, because are they afraid the SEC could come down? Because
I think it's because when you're working for a larger company, they have to kind of get everybody to do the same thing. So you don't really have a lot of flexibility there. And for me, they give you a sales system, and it's like, okay, here's their sales system. I think it was written by like some 70-year-old guy that like did it on note cards, and it's like, here's how you cold call people, and then ask for referrals even though you haven't done anything for them yet. And it's like, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. I know I can be online at some point, and that's kind of what got me started thinking about going down that road.
So you did financial planning until, well, actually, let's back up even further, because you were a baseball player, you played D1 baseball.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, maybe even back up sooner. As far as I know, well, I'll let you tell the story. So let's back up sooner. Like, how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? What got you into baseball? And then maybe talk even a little bit about what got you interested in investing. Because to me, investing, I didn't even really learn about that until I'd already had a business for years, and then I just didn't know what to do with my extra money.
Yeah, so I grew up in Little Saginaw, Michigan, and in
Saginaw.
Saginaw,
okay.
Yep. And in Saginaw, like, you make $100,000 a year, you're a baller. So that's kind of where my sights were set initially. Like, hey, if I can do 6 figures a year, I'm making it. And I kind of got into the investing space because my dad, similar background. So he was a financial controller, CPA, like his entire career. That's actually what I went to school for. So I went to school to be a CPA, realized I hated it, but investing was a nice complement to that. So kind of got into investing through that. And my dad was also a baseball player. So he coached me basically from the time I was 4 years old all the way to high school, and always loved it and just kind of kept going as long as I could, or as long as, 5'7", 150-pound guy can go, which...
Bro. Well, it's like funny you brought that up, because I didn't even know that about you. And that's probably what I was initially thinking. It's like, I mean, you look like a baseball player. If you were in sports, I could see you as a baseball player. But yeah, like your size, it's not like it stands out as like you were a D1 athlete.
Yeah, you don't think I'm going to go play D1 football?
I mean, that definitely, maybe you kicker. I can see your putter.
Damn.
Okay, so you grew up playing sports. then you went to college, you did the CPA. So like walk me through like, okay, now you've graduated, right? So what are you, 23, 24?
Yeah.
And then kind of walk me through how many years did you do that before you start transitioning to what you do now?
Yeah, good question. So I worked as a CPA for like a single year. That was one
wow.
year, and then immediately transitioned into financial planning. That I did for half a dozen years. And it was the first.
So you were there a while.
Yeah, I was there for a while, kind of built a small practice doing things that way. But I knew the entire time I was there that it probably wasn't going to be the right path for me from an income standpoint, who I was building clientele with. Like I wanted to work with a younger demographic, and you couldn't really do that there. It would have taken me decades.
Why? So talk about that. Why couldn't you work with a younger demographic?
Well, my friends didn't have a whole lot of money. And if you're making money by managing their investments and they got like $2,000 in their bank account, then, and that was my network. That's who
all
I
you
knew.
could do. Yeah. So you finished that. You did that for about 6 years. So you're around, how old are you about the time you start finishing that?
Yeah. So mid-20s, late 20s, somewhere in there.
Okay. So you're late 20s. And then that's when you start getting into day trade. Now, walk me through that because, growing up, I just didn't really know about any of that stuff. I just knew you had a stock market, you had a savings account, you put your money in stocks, you just kind of hold and wait. You can put your money in savings. So, I mean, maybe first explain what day trading is for anyone who's listening. I mean, I'm sure most people do, but some may not. And then, as you start getting into that, like, how did you start getting into that? How did you start making it profitable? How did you start making money?
Yeah. So for those that don't know day trading, think of it like you're buying and selling a stock in the same day. So rather than buying and holding it and letting it appreciate over time, which is how most people think about investing, you're really trying to turn a profit in that single day.
Right.
So it's really like an auction in a sense, where you want to buy low, sell high. Same concept with day trading. You're just doing it on an intraday basis with stocks. For me, getting into that was kind of, I didn't necessarily know anything about that stuff growing up either. Even as a financial planner, they don't really teach you how to do that because it's all building longer term investment portfolios. But you kind of learn that it exists in that world. And for me, it became an avenue that would allow me to potentially make more money outside of my normal financial planning job that I knew just wasn't going to get me to where I wanted to go. So that was kind of my first transition into a different kind of skill that could make me more money. And at the beginning, I sucked. Like I was terrible because I didn't know. I didn't have a coach to really teach me how to do it. So it took me 4 or 5 years.
Well, and it's completely different than what you've learned, right? Just so I'm clear, when you're learning financial planning, you're thinking long term. And so everything you're doing is long term. So getting into day trading is completely different, right? I mean, it's totally different skill set. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. 100% different.
So if someone's listening to this and they want to get into day trading, walk through even what you do. So, I mean, like I'll walk you through what I know. Let's say I got an E-Trade account. I don't even know if that's a good account. I have an E-Trade account. I buy stocks in there. I can, how does that shit work? I mean, you have this charts. I've seen your charts a few times. I have no idea how charts are. Like walk through maybe like that process of day trading.
kind of the nuts and bolts. So, I mean, you can start with picking where your account is. There's a bunch of different places you can use for that.
Is it all the same though? It doesn't really matter.
Some are better than others for day trading specifically. So like an E-Trade account, you can do it. You may not be able to do it quite as efficiently depending on your strategy. So there's some that are better than others, but because of all the moving parts, you kind of want to break it down into what your goals are and then decide on a strategy first. So my goal is I want to use it as an income producing tool. So I'm not necessarily using it just to build long-term wealth. I want to use it for income. So I need to find a strategy that's going to align with that. Once you start putting together strategy components, now you can break it down into finer details in terms of, okay, now I'm going to use this strategy, and think of it almost like identifying a set of criteria that you're looking for to buy and sell throughout the course of the day.
Okay.
And if you can get that set of criteria to line up,
you stick with it over and over and over.
Yeah, you stick with it with consistency.
Walk me through what the charts show. And I'm assuming all the charts really, when I say chart, maybe you can even explain what I mean by chart, because I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then 2 is I've heard different ways of day trading. So for example, options, futures. Can you explain the different ways that you could trade, and then maybe explain what those charts are that I'm talking about? I think you know what I'm referring to.
Sure. So all a chart really is the price of that particular asset. So the thing that you're trading. So we'll pick on Apple because everybody knows Apple. So a chart on Apple is just showing the price of Apple throughout the course of the day. And you can break that down into different time frames that will reflect what price is during those different time frames. And all you're really looking to do is formulate a strategy that allows you to buy low and sell high using price as an indicator to do that. Cool thing about day trading is you don't necessarily need price to go up all the time. So you can short a position. So I can sell up here and then buy down here, and I still make profit on that transaction. But that's all a chart is. It's just showing price throughout the course of the day, and your job is to basically put yourself in a position to buy low and sell high. As far as you mentioned options, futures, think of them like different tools that you can use to trade with. So options and futures are just different ways to trade the same thing. So I can trade options on Apple, I can trade options on the S&P 500, I can trade futures on the S&P 500. So they're different tools that have slightly different rules around them. You're still trading the same thing, but you may be able to make more or less depending on how you're trading.
Would you be able to define that? So someone hears options, futures, they may still not really define what an option is, define what a future is if you're trading that way.
Yeah, so let's pick on options as an example. All an option is it's a contract. So think of it like, hey, I'm agreeing to buy a certain number of shares of Apple at this price, or I can sell it at a higher price. But you own the rights to that contract, where when you're buying a share of stock, as an example, you really just have ownership interest in that company for however long you decide to hold it. Well, with an options contract or a futures contract, that contract is going to expire at some point. So your goal is to make your money in that window before it actually expires, where if you just own a share of stock, you can just basically hold it forever. As long as it's a good company, it'll go up over time.
So if I was to buy something with an option, does that mean I don't actually own it yet, or how does that work?
You own the rights to the contract, but you don't actually own the stock itself.
So the way how do I actually buy the option? Is it just a smaller price than what it would be if I actually own the stock outright?
Yeah, you own significantly more shares. Okay. So like an option contract, you'd own 100 shares as opposed to a single share of Apple. Because of that, you can make a lot more money in shorter windows if you know what you're doing, because you control more of that stock. Interesting.
Okay. And then in terms of futures, what would be the difference on that?
Very similar concept to options. So it's still a leverage contract, which means essentially you're betting on the price at a certain point in time. But with day trading, you're basically just trying to make your money in that window that you hold the actual contract.
So you were a financial planner for 6 years. You're now in like 30-ish, upper 20s. You start doing this. Yes, I'm so old these days. You start doing predominantly options trading, I think is what you do mostly, correct? Futures, sorry. Do mostly futures trading. And you do that for how many years? And then when do you finally kind of make the move from, like, at this time, have you already gotten out of financial planning, or did you start doing it and then you make the move and you do it full time?
Yeah, it almost all kind of happened at once. It was almost kind of like a stars align type year, where I knew I wanted to exit financial planning. And this is, 5-6 years in. So I've been doing it for a while at this point. I'm just starting to get to a point where I'm making more doing that than I am with my financial planning career. So I know I'm about to exit that because I'm just making better money doing it this way. And around that time, but I still never lost touch with, I want to do something online, because I've seen people run online businesses, have success with it. So I'd kind of been following along with that world for a while. And then 2020 happens and the whole world changes, right? So I can't do in-person financial planning meetings anymore. It seems almost fate that I need to be online and do something. Day trading is just starting to take off, and people are super interested in it, because that's also the same year we had the GameStop stuff happen.
All right, yeah, then that whole movie came out about it. Yeah,
everybody's jumping on Robinhood. So it was almost like, exactly, it was almost like perfect timing for, if I'm going to make a move, I know I can make money day trading. I'm already doing that. If I'm going to make a move into an online business world, like now's the time to do it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that started.
Okay, so you start making money. You get out of financial planning almost because of the pandemic, so you didn't even really have a choice, correct?
Pretty much.
So you start day trading at this point. How much are you making day trading at this time? I mean, share if you feel comfortable. But what, like, how much are you actually making like day trading now?
Yeah. So at this point, 2020 was my first $1 million year. Before that, the most I had ever made was 150 or so. So
Okay.
it's more money than I'd ever made financial planning wise.
Sure.
So and it kind of went in a big transition where my first year, I'm making just about as much or my first year profitable, I should say, making just about as much as my financial planning career. And then I jump and almost triple it with the $150,000 year. And then 2020 was the $1 million year, kind of the same time I
So
went
did you ever really quit financial planning, or it just was the pandemic hit, and then by the time you could go back in the office, you didn't want to because you're making so much money? It almost sounds like you didn't quit.
Yeah, I was still doing it. Just I wasn't really bringing on a whole lot of new clients at that point. I kind of knew the trajectory I was going to go. So there wasn't like I wasn't doing 100 cold calls anymore.
So you're starting to do this, is starting to take off. Eventually, I guess I want to get into the next part of your phase. So it's starting to take off the day train. Do people start asking you for help? Because obviously your company Invest CEO, that's one of your companies where you're actually teaching people the strategies, So talk about how you go from a day trader to now you're teaching people the same strategies that have made you successful.
Yeah, so I had seen other people teach stuff online. And before, at the time, I'm thinking, okay, this is a great potential income source for me. I didn't necessarily expect to make $1 million a year day trading. So I'm thinking about going down that avenue anyway. It wasn't necessarily that I had a bunch of people asking me to teach them at the time before I really started the business, but I did have clients that wanted to experience some of the same things that I was doing. And I couldn't really do that with a traditional financial planning practice. So I was kind of putting those wheels in motion already as we got into 2020, thinking about getting into an online business. I didn't know what I was doing. So I don't think I ever told you the story, but before I got more help building an online business, I had like 100 pages of notes on an iPad on like all the ClickFunnels stuff, like all this stuff that you're supposed to do, how to run a webinar. So I like
just knowing you, it's like that's probably very extensive because you're a very meticulous guy.
Yeah, it's like I probably still have them. I'll show you sometime. But I launched this webinar, right? And this is like 1 week before I go ask you for coaching help. So you can imagine how it went. But I had one person show up, one single human being, and the sound didn't work. They couldn't hear what I was saying. It was just slides the whole time. So that was when I was like, okay, I have the money to do this. I want to do this. I'm just going to find someone to help me do it. And that's kind of how Invest CEO started.
Okay. So you didn't, I think that's very interesting. You didn't necessarily have all these people asking for help, but I guess that goes back to being a financial planner. That's what you like to do. You like to actually give people advice. You just felt that job was ill-equipped to help you reach your goals. Plus, it almost seems, correct me if I'm wrong, it almost seems as if the money was just a nice to have. It almost doesn't even seem like that was a big motivator for you.
I wanted to do the online business thing.
Yeah.
So the money, no one's going to complain about the money part, but
Of course.
for me, the business, like day trading is a very isolated skill. So
You're by yourself.
Yeah, you're by yourself, and there's a sense of competition to it, but you can't really feed into that too much because you won't be a very good trader if you do. So for me, the online business part was more of the athlete side of me, where I want to build something that's mine, and that I can be proud of.
What makes the best traders? It almost would seem to me on the outside that it's similar to gambling. Would you say that the best day traders have similar tendencies to a gambler, or would you say it's almost the opposite?
I'd say it's almost the opposite. So there's statistics out there that'll tell you that like 90% of retail, so ordinary traders, fail. They never become profitable. And this is something that I tell my students all the time. If you were to look at the percentage of the average person and what percentage of the average person is actually in control of their emotional state, aware of their emotions, act in a disciplined manner, it's probably about 10%, right? Like 90% of people fly by the seat of their pants. They're not in control of their emotions. They're not really aware of what they're thinking. But those things are required for day trading success. So it's not a surprise that 90% of people fail, because 90% of people aren't in control of their emotional state. And when you see money go up and down in seconds, you need to be in control of your emotions, or else you're going to make poor choices.
You just finished off talking about you ran a webinar with one slide or one person and couldn't hear anything, right? So what happens next? Because I think this is an interesting part of your story, and then we'll delve more into, you know, what you're doing now. But you go to look for help and then kind of talk more about that.
Yeah, so found this guy named Tanner Chidester. He just kept sending me freaking emails, man. I think I had 100 emails from you at the time. I was like, okay.
But had you been on the list for a few years? Like, you've been on the email list for a few years?
It was probably like 5 months or so.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd watched all your YouTube videos, got hit by like 800 different Facebook ads, but you stood out because of the emails. Like, you were the only one that sent that many emails and that much follow up. So you just followed up more than anybody else.
I love it.
I already knew I was going to join before the call. Yeah. So like, it's probably the easiest sales call ever. It was, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
Pay in full. We're ready to rock and roll. And that's kind of what got me started with Elite CEOs and working with you guys and learning how to build an online business, which obviously I had no idea how to do. But I knew I could work hard. And what you guys told me.
So from what I remember, right, because I'm not having usually the direct interaction with the clients, the communication, et cetera. Did you went 0 to 100,000 in 30 days, right? Was that something like that?
Yeah. I think 100,000 was actually like 4 months in, but I went 0 to 72K in 30 days.
That's non-smiling.
My coach at the time was me, but she gave me an assignment to go get like 3 clients in my first like week or something, and I did it like a day later.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it started. So I got off to a really, really fast start. Part of it, probably the offer, the timing. So I got fortunate with that. But
talk someone through that. So what do you think you did that made you grow so fast? And maybe talk a little bit about the strategy and the tactics, but also maybe your mindset, because from what I remember, you seem to have a really good mindset coming in. That was at least what I remember coming through the coaching staff, is that, man, this guy, like, he does whatever I say. He knows it's going to work. He's patient. So maybe talk a little bit about what tactics and strategies did you do to go from 0 to 72,000 in a single month, which was like half you made as a CPA or CFA, excuse me, or CFP. I can't even keep the letters straight. I'm like, finally got CFP. Acronyms. But I think also, you know, your mindset, because you've always seemed to me as you're very just laid back, chill, patient. You're not in a rush. I don't know, maybe talk a little bit about both of those.
Yeah, so mindset standpoint, a lot of that stuff came from day trading, where I was already working on that as a skill set, like being in control of my emotions, you know, taking ownership, taking accountability. Like for me, I'm going to do what you guys say and do the steps that are necessary, because to not do that and make excuses is me giving up control. And I don't want to give up control. Like, I want to be able to control the outcome as much as possible. So that side of things, I never really had an issue with, because I was already working on those skills to begin with. I think what helped me from just a strategic standpoint, building the business initially, was I was different than a lot of the trading stuff that was out there, where a lot of it's, you know, cheap subscriptions and the Wild West, and it's like just absolute chaos, and nobody's really getting thoughtful help. So for me, one thing that I did well was position myself differently than that. So I leaned on community a lot, where when I brought people in on ads on the front end, they were all funneled into, at the time, a Facebook group. So I started building that community feel, and it became more of a family and experience atmosphere, as opposed to like, come become a gazillionaire by clicking some buttons on Robinhood tomorrow, which is what the rest of the space was like at the time. So I think I stood out a little bit in that way.
Yeah, I would agree. When you start making money, talk. Here's what I find interesting. Obviously, your business has pivoted a little bit in how you're selling, what you're selling. So talk a little bit about what you were selling in the beginning, maybe some of the price points, if you're willing. You don't have to say the exact number, but that'd be somewhat helpful, or like, you know, 4-figure, 5-figure, whatever. talk about what you're selling in the beginning and then what you're selling now, because I love what you're selling now compared to what was in the beginning. But the cool part is that was 100% your idea, right? And I mean, and it's worked out. I think I just always telling you to spend more money on ads. So talk about what you sold in the beginning and then talk about what you're selling now and the differences. And because I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, I actually love this conversation because I think a lot of business owners get into the mindset that, okay, once they've built the product, it's done. And I think about it more in terms of how can I continually make it better? So my product, like what I offer has changed several times over the past few years, but it's gotten better each time based on client feedback and just structuring a better offer. So we've talked a lot about Hormozy's offer framework, where you have, dream outcome, perceived likelihood of success, time decay, like how long it's going to take them, and effort and sacrifice. Well, at the beginning, I started out with kind of a modified group coaching type offer, and we could charge $5,000 for that. And that's great. So to make it better, we turned it into a one-on-one coaching offer. Now I can charge more. The perceived likelihood of success goes up. People get slightly better results. They get there a little bit faster. What took us, and that took us to over $100,000 a month. What took us to $250,000 a month was taking that same one-on-one coaching offer and helping people get there faster. So that's when we brought in prop firm funding, helping people trade without using their own capital. So now they had a higher perceived likelihood of success and they could get to their goals way, way faster. Because rather than having to build like a little $5,000 account from scratch, we could get them a bigger pot of money.
So explain that really quick to everyone who's listening. What's a prop firm? Explain kind of how that works.
Yeah, think of a prop firm like a company that will extend trading funds to you. So you can trade on their money in exchange for a percentage of profit as long as you prove you're qualified. So you basically have to go through a practice trading evaluation in order to qualify for the capital. But once you get it, it's not a loan, so you don't have to, pay it back or anything. You can lose it if you perform poorly, but any profit you make, you keep up to 90% of that profit. So for our students, rather than trading on, or risking a couple $1,000s of their own money doing the trading, we can go get them a couple $100,000 with a prop firm because we understand how to get through those evaluations and help them qualify in an efficient manner. And now they have less risk doing the trading and they can make way more. So the offer just became way better.
And just so I'm clear, the upside is that the prop firm gets percentage of profit, but the downside for the person, if they get money from the prop firm, is that if they lose too much, they can cut them off, correct?
Right. And you'd have to go through the evaluation process.
Yeah, all over again. So really, if you're not good, it's not going to work out for you, but it's a great way otherwise where you can use someone else's money to basically leverage and start making profit, get results, move faster, stuff of that nature, right?
Yep, you got it. So that's kind of how we transitioned from an offer standpoint, got a little bit better. And now what I have now took that to the next level. So what I did is I coded my trading strategy into an algorithm that can do the trading for them. And
your trading strategy, for context, Kyle, did you come up with that on your own? Did you learn it somewhere? Like, how do you come up with that strategy?
A combination of both. I don't think you're ever going to find, there'll be people that claim they have, but you're never going to find someone that, you're never going to find someone that's like, oh, I invented this thing from scratch. There's always concepts that you pull. I just tweaked it in a way that fit what I was trying to do. So I took concepts like supply and demand that are already out there, and I adjusted it to what I wanted it to do. And then for our newest product, I coded it into an algorithm. So what that's done for a select number of our clients is, okay, now we took that offer framework, the amount of time, perceived likelihood of success, the effort and sacrifice goes way, way down. They don't have to do anything now. So they can still get a result. They don't have to do any work and they can still reach their dream outcome. So like now we can sell that for $25,000 because it's a much better offer. And now we have the combination of those couple things that work together to make a really good combination of offers and products.
This is where I'd like to maybe get more insight for the listeners is when you were first selling your consulting, it was more about, hey, here's how I do my trades. I could teach you this. You even gave people ways where they could see some of your trades live and stuff like that so they could follow along. And now what it seems like is you've taken that algorithm, as you said, and you were charging, let's say, 4 figures, 5 figures for that. And now you actually have a considerably higher offer where people could come to you and they will invest their funds and you're able to put it into your algorithm. Now, if someone was to do that, they'll say, hey, I want to work with Kyle. I want to invest money. They have a bunch of cash laying around. What would you say is the minimum amount people put into this algorithm that you've made now?
Yeah, good question. So there are a couple of different things you can use it for. So you can actually plug it into some prop firm accounts, which can obviously be really, really appealing because now you have that income stream created and you don't actually need any live capital outside of the fee that you pay us. So that part's really appealing. You can,
so essentially, I'm clear, someone would pay you and they might not even need to give you any cash outside the fee for you. You just use the prop firm's money to do what they're paying you to do. Okay. And then what's the other way?
Yeah, and you can use it for live funds too. And we have most of our clients that are on it use both. So they'll plug some into prop firms, but then they'll have some money in the bank. Average is 25, 50K, somewhere in there is what they'll start with. But they can let that trade for them as well because it's money they had sitting on the sidelines anyway that wasn't really working for them or not working hard enough.
Okay. And so you put that money in the algorithm, and then on average, if someone was to invest in your funds just for the viewer's interest, like how much can someone make typically from that algorithm? And then what's the risk, right? Because that's the biggest thing I think everyone's always thinking is what's the risk if I put it in this algorithm? They promise this, they promise that, but so how much can someone actually make in a time frame? And then what's the risk involved?
Yeah, good question. So right now, what it's done is 4 or 5% a month. Can't promise that. It's just kind of the way the investing world works, but I can tell you what it's done, and that's what it's done recently. So depending on the amount of capital you have, 4 or 5% of that is on average what it's made. The risks are similar to what you'd have with any kind of investing risk, right? Like there's the chance that it performs poorly. You will have negative months in there. We haven't really run into that yet, but there's always that risk, right? Whenever you invest in anything, you're going to have the risk of poor performance in any given month. The goal is to stick with it for a long period of time so that you can let it work for you. So that's kind of what it's done.
And then, what I find interesting about your business is there's obviously a lot of business consulting out there, which, stuff that I do could be more considered, hey, I'm going to show you how to build a business the same way I've built mine, right? Yours is not really like that. Yours is more investing. So how has that journey been learning how to build an online business? Because some of the skills you've learned with ads and funnels and those things versus what you're actually teaching. How's that dynamic, and has that other side of the business been hard for you to pick up or grasp?
I don't know that it's been hard to pick up, but there's always elements that are more frustrating than others. So like for me, the tech side of things, I can't stand the tech, like building funnel pages and connecting all that stuff together. I hate that part of it, but you got to do it, right? It's just one of those things that you have to do. And I'm getting better at doing that, or at least learning where to outsource that to get more help with it. The part I love though is the planning side of things. So thinking of
strategy.
I love strategy. So building offers, building products, talking about the marketing and what the angles are going to be. I love that part.
So someone who's listening, if, I think you have a very interesting background with how you grew up. You kind of had a normal 9-to-5 job. Didn't really seem, I guess you knew early on you wanted to do something different, but maybe you didn't have that clear pathway. For someone who's listening, what advice would you give them? Would it be more to take that day trading path where you learned how to day trade and you kind of moved into this, or would it be to start a business? Or what would you say to someone who maybe is looking at what you did and said, how can I get started? What would you recommend?
Well, I'd say the biggest thing is just to do something, right? Like if you're thinking about this kind of stuff, you already know that you have to do something. Today's world is different. You need a different kind of income skill, and whether that's an online business, whether it's something like day trading, you got to do something. One of my biggest regrets is that I didn't do it sooner. Like I got started way later than you. So for me, it's I'm almost 30 by the time I even had the online business side of things going. Was just starting to make day trading work at that point. And if I would have started soon, I just think about what it would have looked like if I would have started 10 years earlier, and just astronomically different, right? So my biggest advice is just to do something and know that you're not going to be 100% ready before you start. Like, you are guaranteed to fail over and over again. And I failed lots of times, but you learn from that, right? It's just kind of part of the process. And I think people wait until like they think they're going to understand it all before they start, but there's elements of it that you can't possibly understand. Like even now running ads and trying to scale a business, you run it until failure happens. You have to, and then you fix the failures and you improve it.
What would you say, looking back, was your biggest mistake? So something you wish you had done different, and then your biggest struggle, something you had to go through, but it was just hard.
Yeah. So for me, biggest mistake, honestly, I take on too many things sometimes. So, and this is maybe I overcorrected from the struggle part I'm going to share with you next. But for me, I probably do things and then I'm like, oh, maybe I didn't need it. So for example, running my hedge fund, I love it now, but I probably didn't need to do it at the time, right? It was just too many moving parts. Like I already had other things going on. I probably didn't need to add that at the time. So sometimes I have a tendency to take on more than maybe I should, rather than just getting better at the one or two things that I am doing and trying to get better at that. But for me, it's probably a lot of overcorrection in terms of I didn't necessarily have, like I struggled with really understanding who I was and being confident in that person, especially growing up through college. Like I was almost impossibly shy in high school and college. Like I didn't have much of a social life. Some people probably thought I was standoffish. I was shy. And I didn't really have a ton of confidence in who I was as a person. And I was kind of that kid that like I was an athlete, but also a nerd. And I didn't really know where, I didn't really know where to fit in with that. So that was probably the biggest thing that I struggled with, and being able to work through that and just have a ton of confidence in who I am as a person. That's part of why I jump at opportunities now, because I'm confident that I can take it and run with it, but I didn't always have that.
Why do you think that is? When I think I met you, I never really got that vibe. So going back when you weren't that confident, is there a particular reason? Was it the way you were raised or something that happened, or why do you think that was?
I think that was kind of my natural state growing up. Like I was always kind of that way, and then life kind of shook me out of that. And shared a little bit with you about this story about I was in a relationship for half a dozen years, right? And like this was my entire future. Like I was going to have kids with this woman. We were building a family together, and it just all ended in like the span of 2 weeks. It was just like all came crashing down. Yeah. And at the time, like my dream was just, okay, I'm going to have the white picket fence and maybe make $250,000 a year, which would just be insane money for Saginaw, Michigan. And I was going to have a couple kids and maybe take a vacation a year. And that's just the path that I was going to be on. And then this whole relationship comes to an end. My whole world gets turned upside down. I mean, I lost the house. She took the dog. Like I didn't have any money at the time. And for me, it was like, okay, the way I'm going to handle this is I'm just going to focus on being the absolute best version of myself. That's the only thing I knew how to do. And that's what took me down that path.
I'm glad you said that. As the irony is, I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to attracting partners, success, whatever, is if you just focus on being the best version of yourself, you can attract those types of things. You'll attract better partners, better business deals, because people, it always goes back to you. It always goes back to being the best version of yourself. For anyone who's listening, Kyle, whether they want to get into day trading or they want to know more about you, or maybe they want to use your algorithm that's making gobs of cash right now, where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, so super easy. Couple different places you can go: Instagram, Facebook, Kyle Henris. That's all it is. Find both my pages just with my name, and same thing with the website, just kylehenris.com. You can find all the information you want.
Awesome, man. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you coming on the show.
You bet, buddy.